I just realized I was applauding for myself, but I'm going with it. I'm giving myself a round of applause. Literally. If you're like, I'm sitting there with like, invisible popcorn, like, oh crap, hilarious. But because you're not a threat and you're not like trying to, as they say, take someone's spot, people are a lot nicer to you in that way. And then you're like a fly on the wall. But the best part about it to me, and again, not naming names, give me a few more Pinot Grigios, no, I'm kidding. And I'm going to go into a little feminist preach here, but like that's what I think feminism is kind of going, okay, well, it's my choice not to want to do that, just like it might not be someone's choice to, instead of being a serious wrestler, they want to do lingerie shoots, because it is a double whammy. It's not that I was just a female, it's that I was really young. I was literally 15. My first show was 3 days after my 16th birthday. You know what? The bigger the star, the nicer they are. The Hogan and Bischoff era, I really think that the best time, the most exciting time for me, and again, I was there 9 years, it wasn't a short stint, that was the most exciting time because they were really putting us on the map. Because like, you get these hardships and they happen and it hurts for maybe a minute, but you gotta have a tough skin and you gotta go, listen, it's going to work out for me if I just show up, do the work, look good, present myself like a star. Hello, look at you, monsieur. Listen, right. I'm spilling the tea here, but all I'm saying is, and no need to name names, they know who they are. Sure. But and here they are, camera. I'm just kidding.
Attempt to walk straight or adjust your gait. This is LiMPiN AiNT, where the biggest stars in sports entertainment share their real life, personal stories of being in the thick of the heat, having their eyes raked, their trunks pulled, having a foreign object bust them wide open and be laid out for the count. 1, 2, and they kick out at the last second to blow an epic comeback on the white hottest, biggest, baddest, shit-kickingest heel you'll ever encounter. I am your handy, captivating host. My name is Timmy Baltimore. I want to thank you for making this program part of your entertainment week. Hey, listen, LiMPiN Ain't Easy isn't just a clever title. It's actually difficult. This life of mine is tough. If you want to make the limping just a little bit easier, click like. Subscribe to this YouTube channel. Subscribe to the podcast. Comment on our content. Go to our social medias. At Timmy Baltimore, that's the handle. And hop on the short bus and make my very, very grim life just a little bit brighter. I'm going to keep this one short and sweet, just like our guest this week. Both of us are technically on-air personalities. Both of us named after the geographical areas we're from. However, I'm more of my style is more stuttering prick to her multimedia magnetism. I don't know if she's the best of us, but I haven't met any better. We must protect her at all costs. Please join me in welcoming it. It is my distinct honor and privilege to do so. It says on her birth certificate, Southern California Valerie, but we know her and we love her as SoCal Val. Welcome everyone to LiMPiN Ain't Easy. My name is Timmy Baltimore. I am joined this week by a lovely, lovely woman and a old friend of mine, the wonderful, the vivacious, the dynamic SoCal Val. How are you, SoCal Val?
I just realized I was applauding for myself, but I'm going with it. I'm giving myself a round of applause. Literally, if you're listening on audio only, you really missed out.
It's okay. Theater of the mind, right? You described it. Just a consummate professional, and it shows.
Thank you.
You're currently not in the United States at the moment. You're joining us via satellite from.
I am broadcasting live from London, England. Actually, I always say near London because no one ever knows where Milton Keynes is unless you are listening or watching from the UK. But yeah, so I've lived in England for almost 9 years now. I've been here for quite a while, and I do come back to the States I would say at least, 3, 4 times a year minimum, but I've lived here for almost 9 years. So yeah, you are literally in my living room right now, slash bar. You're literally on the bar with me, which I thought was very appropriate.
That is
With
very
my very crazy feature wall, which is by Matthew Williamson, a fabulous British designer. But we had a conversation before we started that this wallpaper is so much fun right now. But there was a time where I was hopped up on medication after a surgery, and I swore that this wall was coming right at me. It was coming right for me, bro. And I was like, I don't like it anymore. Nope.
well. If anybody is watching this and enjoying some substances, maybe they're having the same terrifying experience.
You're welcome. You're welcome for the nightmares. Yeah.
There's some
It's a
stuff
lot.
going on mine too, but it's for completely different reasons. Some lighting issues.
Perfect.
I got
Thank
you
you for
just
having me. You look
completely
great, by
blocked.
the way. You look beautiful and dapper.
Thank you so much. You look
welcome.
stunning as always. I wanted to talk a little bit about, Val. I've always really I mean, you hit it off with everyone, it seems like, but
Oh,
I've
thank
always
you.
felt like I hit it off with you because a lot of people in the wrestling industry, and it's people wanted to be wrestlers, or people were wrestlers, so they went with that in mind, that journey. That was not your journey at all, and to the best of my recollection, was that your desired path? You didn't set out to be a wrestler, did you?
No, not at all. And I think that's maybe why we bond, and I bond with a lot of people that do things outside of it. Like I think of people like Byron Saxton and Mackenzie Mitchell, and people that they kind of prefer to do the talking. And even though Byron, of course, was an amazing wrestler, but yeah, I never really set out to do that. What I liked to do, what I emulated and wanted to do was to be like a WWE diva. Really, I loved the divas era. I loved that they wrestled once in a while, but it was more about being a character. And I loved that it was kind of not that serious wrestling. It wasn't super athletic. I'm not super athletic. Could I be if I tried? Maybe, but I always joke that I'm allergic. I bruise like a peach. Not for me. Never been very physical. I come from a family of all girls where, I danced a bit, but I was never anything like athletic. But yeah, I wanted to be like I didn't want to be a China, or I'll use more modern wrestling terms, like, a very serious wrestler, or like the Japanese women who are amazingly technical. I wanted to be a Stephanie McMahon more than anything. I wanted to be a Tori Wilson, or those kind of girls who were. I didn't mind being the damsel in distress, like a Miss Elizabeth. I always liked the very powerful, like heel characters, like a Stephanie. Especially like her Jericho, Triple H kind of era, Kurt Angle era. So yeah, I wanted to be them. I didn't want to be, and I love her, and she's amazing, but I didn't want to be a Lita, to be kind of taken as seriously as the guys and things like that. I knew that that wasn't for me, and I think and I'm going to go into a little feminist preach here, but like that's what I think feminism is kind of going, okay, well, it's my choice not to want to do that, just like it might not be someone's choice to, instead of being a serious wrestler, they want to do lingerie shoots. But we both want to contribute to the business and do what we can and interview or wrestle. So yeah, I just think everyone has the choice, and for me the choice was mostly to do things on the microphone, really.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool because being a personality in professional wrestling is just as you may not be in there being physical, but when things happen that are maybe have physical implications, it means a lot
Yeah.
more, and
Right.
you can contribute just as much. It's always funny to me when you see a in-ring talent either transitioning to a commentary position or given an opportunity, and they kind of look at it as a demotion sometimes. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
nuts. You're nuts. You get the most
Yeah.
mic time.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know what? I hate to say it, and a lot of wrestlers don't like hearing this, because I think I'm not going to use the word ego, but there's a lot of, let's say, sensitivity with wrestlers who are just about the physical side of things. And that's okay. And I understand that. I know a lot of different wrestlers that really just focus on that. But, so many things can happen, injuries, storylines fizzling away and fading away, and not having a place for you in the actual match time. Whereas you said, you're seen all the time and you're heard constantly when you're an announcer, a commentator, an interviewer. And I think there's longevity in that. And that's what I really appreciated about, after TNA's, my storyline with Jay Lethal and Sanjay Dutt. They asked me, if you're going to go back to doing Ring Girl, is that kind of a demotion? Is it a step back? And I said, well, honestly, especially Ring Girl, I'm not getting much screen time. I wasn't speaking much. That kind of, it was a step back. And I said, yes, it is. But then I stuck it out, and I had people like Mike Weber and Jeremy Borash and David Sahadi, and people that would give me opportunities to keep growing and to keep being seen and doing bigger and better things. And even certain things that were outside of wrestling, like learning the skills to edit videos and to, write my own scripts that eventually people like Hogan and RVD were speaking. And, that kind of thing was creatively fulfilling to me. But yeah, I think there's something to be said for having a longevity in the business outside of the physical wrestling ring. I will say this, CM Punk is someone that I've watched for a very long time, and he was a great talker when I was watching on the indies. As a wrestler, I always feel kind of weird commenting because I'm not a physical wrestler. I can't go, oh, he did that move right or wrong. I don't know. I can tell when someone's sloppy, but I'm not going to pick apart a move. But with him, he's a great talker. Therefore, ergo, he is a fantastic commentator and speaker. Like, he was doing one of the kind of like a kickoff show when we went to Mania a couple years ago, and I was like, he's so well spoken. He always has been in character, but now him as CM Punk, the talker, the host, very, very good. And I was happy to see him do that.
When you before you got into wrestling, I have to imagine, because your personality is such that you had to be in love with some facet of showbiz one way or another.
For sure.
Who were your early influences? Who did you watch? Who made you think, I want to be on that side of that camera?
In wrestling or outside, or both?
Outside, originally.
Outside, maybe. Yeah, because I just mentioned Stephanie was probably my biggest influence in that regard. Outside of it, I've always loved, same thing, kind of strong female characters. I love Lucille Ball. I literally have an I Love Lucy DVD. Remember those, kids? In the DVD player right now, because I can't find it anywhere in the UK. Thanks a lot, England. Jeez Louise. People like Lucille Ball. I love so many actresses that have always really resonated with me, that I would just completely die if I ever met. Kate Winslet, chief among them. Kate Blanchett, Nicole Kidman. Actresses that could really transform and be chameleons. But also I loved watching, maybe because now I'm an interviewer, but back then I just was watching interviews as a fan, and I just loved how they came across on screen, and they were well spoken. I know this sounds a bit silly, but like, to me it doesn't. They dressed really well. I loved their red carpet presentations. They just seemed like such stars to me. That a lot of actresses were very influential when I was growing up, and I really thought I would get into acting more. I'm still not counting it out, but it's just something that's kind of why it makes perfect sense that I got into wrestling, because it was all the things I loved. It was the hosting, there was acting involved, there were love triangles, there were sparkly outfits, there were photo shoots. So, in case you didn't say, that was photo shoots. And for those reasons, like, I loved women like that were very, unafraid and very feminine, but like never apologetic about being feminine. I loved that.
Yeah. And I heard a quote from you.
Oh God.
On a different show, and no, I really appreciated it, and it was, you're always so respectful, but the fact that and you said you're careful about, and as a talker as well, and on-air personality, we do sometimes have to be careful about our opinion on certain aspects of the industry, unless we're asked and it's not a test or some nonsense, which we're pretty much past that. But like, you really, I feel like have a grasp not only on the speaking aspect, but you started in the business. You didn't come from, and that's okay if you came from a contest, you came from somewhere else. You started in the business, and I feel like, and I'll get back to that in one sec, but I feel like this quote was really important. You said sometimes with women's wrestling, even and men's wrestling, we're taking it a little too seriously when it comes to the entertainment aspect and what we're allowed, but what we say, we feel comfortable saying we enjoy and who we enjoy being. Can you elaborate a little bit on that, Val?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I just hung out with two UK wrestlers, two that you should totally have your eyes on if you guys are not that familiar with UK wrestling. Gene Money, Will Cruz, look up their matches on YouTube and their promos even. Oh my God, amazing. So I was just talking to them actually yesterday about this, and I used that exact phrase, that I said, gosh, there's certain people, I said, guys, it can be girls too. It happens to both, genders and all in between, that you can take it too seriously. And I feel like that if you had I don't think I would have ever said that in my like earliest days in the business, my earliest years, because I was probably taking it too seriously. But the older I got, and the more I realized that my hobbies outside of wrestling and my likes outside of wrestling were going to take me into other avenues. Like, for example, I do Comic Cons now, and my love of film, I just mentioned certain actresses that I love, and I have so many. I just interviewed, I'm not trying to drop a name here, but there we go. You might want to pick that up. I just interviewed Susan Sarandon like last August. Yeah. And I was like, that I cried.
No
not
big
really
deal.
in front of her, almost huge deal. Oh my God. And just a strong woman, and just chameleon.
Wow.
And you know, if I wasn't that interested in film, I wouldn't have gotten to, you know, have the knowledge to do what I do now, which is interview celebrities that are not anything to do with wrestling. So back then I felt like I had to be laser focused. And in some ways you do, especially when you're under contract to a company like TNA. You know, for example, I lost touch with a lot of what was going on in WWE because I had to know who our champions were, what the storylines were. I was reporting on everything. I was interviewing everyone. So that's around the time that you do get very entrenched in it. Maybe you do take it a little too seriously, but I always had fun with it though. I always knew that, like, no offense, and I hate to say this, and what we do is very important, but in some ways, wrestlers hate when I say, in some ways, wrestling in terms of sports is a drop in the bucket. And I don't mean that to demean wrestling by any means. I just mean that wrestling is huge and it's getting bigger and bigger, even here in the UK, which is very exciting. But you know, you talk to people in football, they don't know anything about what's going on in WWE, and that's fine. Just like if you were to ask me what's going on in, I don't know, name any sport, I have no idea unless they've been on a commercial. I don't know. It's not my world. It's not my wheelhouse, as they say here. So, I think taking it too seriously, taking the business too seriously can be like being in an abusive relationship. Meaning, if you keep, you know, people say all the time, like, the business did this to me and it's the business's fault. And I'm like, no, no, no. You're
Right.
an adult. You're in charge of your own actions. Sure, you have hard times. You get fired from things. You get, you know, you don't get the opportunities you want, but you put your big girl panties on or your big boy pants on and you get back up and you keep working and it's going to work out for you if you stay positive. Or, you know, you blame certain people that, you know, didn't believe in them. I've had people that didn't believe in me that said things like, I'll use two quotes right now. Somebody told me once I was disposable, and somebody told me once that I don't, this is why I don't get paid to think. So things like this happen in
Oh,
the
good.
business. Did it
Right.
feel nice? No. I had one of the girls tell me years ago that I was dressing up too much and my shorts, my skirts were too short and that the guys wouldn't take me seriously. The girl was gone in about 6 months. I was in the company for 9 years. Just saying.
Bam. Bam.
Listen,
Right.
I'm spilling the tea here, but all I'm saying is, and no need to name names, they know who they are.
Sure.
But and here they are, camera. I'm just kidding.
Right.
No, but the point is, like, you get these hardships and they happen, and it hurts for maybe a minute, but you gotta have a tough skin, and you gotta go. Listen, it's gonna work out for me if I just show up, do the work, you know, look good, present myself like a star. Hello, look at you, Monsieur, in your fabulous suit. Um, it's that simple. You know, you put the work in, you're going to get the respect and you're going to get that longevity in the business because people respect you and they want to know that you're there for the right reasons. And consistency will let them know that for sure. And a great attitude and being positive.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. And I find that even if whatever our reasons are when we get in the industry, I feel like, you know, mine was being, you know, have coming in the game with a physical disability and a limp, you know, that prevented me from what the realistic goals that you know,
Yeah.
I wanted to be in the industry. I wanted to
Yeah.
be in the business. How can I maneuver? How can I figure this out? Because it's a
Exactly.
puzzle, right? And
Yep.
nobody's going to give it to you, but you got to take it. And you got to do so, especially as a non-wrestler, in a way that others want to advocate for you. And you've done so
Yeah.
well at that.
Oh,
Um,
thank you. That's so
Getting
nice.
in the industry when you were really, like, when you were young,
Yeah.
um, what did you find yourself? What obstacles, adversities did you find? Not only being a female, but a young female starting out
Yeah,
in your
I think
business.
that's a double whammy. I appreciate that so much, by the way. And you're an inspiration to so many because obviously you're using, you know, what some people would see as, you said, a disability. That's become your signature, your strength, and that's so freaking cool. And I'm so proud of you, and that's amazing. But yes,
Thanks.
I appreciate the question because it is a double whammy. It's not that I was just a female; it's that I was really young. I was literally 15. My first show was 3 days after my 16th birthday. I think the biggest thing, and honestly, like, I'm very lucky to not have a lot of like harassment stories of any kind, of any real significance. Thank God, literally thank God for watching out for me. And honestly, thank God and thank people in the business for being my big brothers and sisters to always shield me from things and look out for me. It's always everyone's little kid sister, right? That's why
Yeah.
it's funny. Like, I might joke, you know, on Twitter about, oh, I'm a grandma now, haha. I mean, I'm not, but you know what I mean? Like, that I'm older now because I'll feel older when I go to these like WrestleCon, these signings. But I don't mind being, you know, almost 40 now because I started so young that I was always everyone's little sister, and that got really old. And I was always trying to, you know, hang with the kind of the older girls. And Tracy Brooks and I just had a funny story. I talked to her all the time, and she said, "Yeah, there was a photo shoot you did once, and with all of us, and I remember the exact photo shoot it was." And she said that I was really upset, and I'm like, I'm usually good about people not letting me, you know, being upset in front of people. But I remember this part. She goes, "Yeah, you were really upset that." You looked so much younger than all the other girls. Like, I wasn't really curvy yet. I was like 7, I was 18, I think. And
Mm-hmm.
my face looked really young. I had, I didn't have like a womanly body really yet. And I remember looking at the pictures and I was like, I wanted to be a Tori already. I wanted to be a Christy Hemme and a Tracy and a Gail. And I'm like, little Skipper to Barbie, kid sister. So that part of it was kind of hard. But I will say
Yeah.
that the hardship for me was really what I got offended by and what I had to work against, which really bothered me, was that people thought I wasn't taking it seriously. And that came in the form of, I'm too young, I haven't done my homework, and you bet your bum I did. I was,
Mm-hmm.
watching tapes. I was doing everything I could, ordering tapes off of eBay, Francine versus Dawn Marie, WrestleManias, all this stuff. And yeah, I did my homework, but I was also just offended that they were like, well, also the biggest one for me was, oh, well, is she just here because the cute wrestlers and she's trying, a lot of the thing
Mm.
is a lot of the girls in SoCal, but actually more so in Florida. I did more of my indie work in Florida, and a lot of the women were wives of the wrestlers, and that's why they would be the valet. And that's just how it works, especially when, no offense, there's not a lot of money involved, and they just go, "Oh, my wife's hot, she'll walk me out."
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
That was probably the hardest for me. Is those women were much older than me, and they were like, "Who the hell is this 16-year-old, 17-year-old girl coming in these booty shorts, managing Danny Doring?" And I looked very young too.
Yeah.
I tried to pretend that I was more like a Stacy type, but I wasn't even like that lanky. I mean, I was, but I just was very young. And
Right.
I try to use it as my strength, as we said earlier, but
Yeah.
for the wives to kind of act like I wasn't there for the right reason, and like I might be there to like flirt with the men. I'm like, listen, sweetheart, I'm very outspoken now, but I would be try to, very respectful back then. And it was just jarring and unnerving for me to like for women to be reticent to me doing these shows because they thought that I would in any way be there other than the fact that I just really want to be in the show. I want to
Mm-hmm.
contribute. I want to be a character and I want to cheat and I want to, do my promo. And people like Gabe Sapolsky and Sal Hamui and people like that and Ron Nemi.
Oh
Um,
yeah, the Florida crew. Yeah.
yeah, those
Yep.
are the ones who really believed in me on the indies and gave me the mic and let me manage. And yeah, so they're the ones that like they were like this. I mean, I'm not trying to speak for them, but they were kind of like, this girl's special and she's a good girl
Mhm.
and she's respectful and let's see what she can do. And they believed in me, which I'll never ever forget. I still love all of them.
Yeah. You'd be hard pressed. There's so few people in the industry that nobody has a crossword about. And
Oh,
I'm not one talking about you. No, I'm just kidding.
I thought you were talking about Ron Nemi.
No,
I
I'm
don't
talking
have a
about you,
crossword.
Valerie. Yeah, no, yeah, of course. But there was. I love that there was this protection. There was
Yeah,
this almost like hands off.
yeah,
She's special, and that's
yeah.
how it should have been because there's so many damn horror stories,
I
right?
know.
And the fact that there's one that can be perpetuated that no man, everybody was exactly how they should have been, big brothers, and
Isn't that
almost
nice?
probably to the point that it irritated you a little bit, but right,
Yeah,
like,
I
but
mean, it never really
it's
did.
beautiful.
I think about these guys. A lot of them, the ones that were, PWG and the AJ Styles, the Frankie Kazarians, the Chase Stevens. There were so many that were legit would be like, Frankie Capone, God rest his soul, my good buddies in
Hmm.
wrestling. There were so many that would like, drive. But my mom would drop me off. Okay, we're gonna drive to the show, and they're very. Everyone was so respectful. Nobody ever put me in a situation like that, and I was also, to my own credit, I was very smart about being very protective of myself. I was raised really well by a very, very wise single mom. And she's a go-getter and she's very independent. And I learned that from her. And I felt like I could hang with the guys. And what's funny is I'm so girly, as like Tony and people will tell you. I'm like the girliest of the girly hello wallpaper. But I weirdly like I have a lot of girlfriends in real life, and I think I have more guy friends because of wrestling. But I genuinely feel really, really comfortable being around men and their jokes and all that stuff. Because it just again, it feels like, oh my God, there he goes again. It's one of my big brothers,
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah. The desire to get into the industry and getting your break. It's pretty unique that you started on one coast,
Yeah,
ended up in
weird.
Florida. When you were starting in Florida, I know I was down there in the FCW days. Come there from OVW, and then after in like the 2010s, and it was a bit of a different scene. It felt different than maybe the early 2000s. Did you experience any of that difference? And how would you kind of summarize that scene compared to
I
others?
will say I did and I didn't, only because I was signed. I'm trying to think what year. Well, I did my first TNA show in 2004.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
yes, I mean, I did my first one, like it was a bit like the end of 2004, because my first show was 2002. And again, I got the TNA deal pretty quickly compared to how a lot of people, do it. I still feel like those are formidable years on the independent scene, and I'm happy for them, and I learned a lot. But at the same time, if you think about it, I was also doing indies the entire 9 years I was in TNA. I was still doing indies. But what I'm saying is, like, I was already so entrenched with, by 2010,
Mhm.
I was probably more so on the road. Like, I was then hosting house shows, doing ring announcing, working as, sort of not, I wouldn't say I was in the office full time, but I was kind of an office person, meaning, like, I was the one to get people where this was to go for the sponsorship things. And I had like different opportunities that were more office based. I was kind of at that point talent, but also like doing office things. I worked with Mike Weber, who was our, vice president of marketing for many years. And we did a lot of outside projects and a lot of traveling and stuff together too. So I was so entrenched with TNA by that point that I remember going back to the Florida Indies for a specific show at an Orlando, like high school gym. And I remember one of the wrestlers, again, I'm not going to name names, one of the wrestlers wasn't, this did disappoint me because I hadn't seen what was going on with the Indies as much,
Yeah.
right? Because I was so entrenched with TNA. Again, I would try to do them here and there. But one of the wrestlers, I walked in and it was one of the guys I worked with for years, and he was like, "Oh, here comes a superstar. All right, she's got a contract, blah blah blah." And it wasn't even like, "Hey, proud of you, kid." It was like, "Oh," and I was like, "I don't like that. Like, I'm just like, I'm not anybody. Like, I worked with you when I was 17. Like, can't you be cool, like, or happy for me?" But again, that's sometimes what happens with ego, and you're like,
Mhm.
"All right, dude, are you all right? Because you're not okay with me coming in here." And I didn't have any kind of air about me. I just was kind of, I think, I might not have been on the show. I might have just been like supporting. And to
Right.
get that kind of attitude really bothered me. That only like was one bad experience. But the indies, like I said, that was kind of my main time with TNA, where I was really, really busy with TNA. Yeah.
So the TNA opportunity comes along, and um, how soon did you learn? And was it somebody that told you, or did you just pick it up that if I'm not going to be in there taking bumps, I need to be able to be good at everything. I want to learn everything. Do you remember that? Was that a moment or a realization, or was it a process?
It's such not a moment that it didn't happen at any time. It was just known to me the entire time. And I
Yeah.
think it's a great question, very, very interesting question, because I didn't go in like, okay, this is a girl from wrestling, what can she do? It was like I literally showed up to Universal Studios and we're going through security, and they're like, why do you have VHS tapes? I'm like, oh, this is my my tape and my resume. This is me managing on the indies. And I had like my resume, I think it was pink, by the way. And I would go to the
Beautiful.
show every time and just think, okay, well, who can I give this to? I wonder if I can introduce myself to anybody by myself, usually
Yeah.
going to these impact tapings. And then
Awesome.
eventually I met David Sahadi. It's crazy, right? And he let me be a production assistant backstage. And and he said, I know this is not what you want to do, but he's like, and again, he was like, he saw something in me and was so lovely, so respectful and fabulous. And he was just like, I can tell you really want to be in the business. And he has a crazy, incredible career. If you don't know who David Sahadi is, and gave me my first opportunities in TNA. And he was like, I know you want to contribute to the business. I know you're respectful and you're going to, but this is kind of a way for you to be seen backstage and for you to get to know everybody. So that was kind of the first thing I did. And I was, my role as a production assistant was anything from getting people things to, spraying a spray bottle on Monty Brown so it looked like he had mist around him, to, bouncing the car for this sketch with Elvis and, well, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and Elvis gear and Jeff Jarrett. We were like making it look like a lowrider, like just little things. Then it became Ring Girl. Then Jeremy Borash was like, let's have you be Ring Girl. And then from then on, that went on for many years. And Jeremy Borash was like my mentor. I owe everything at all. As a host these days, I owe everything mainly to Jeremy Borash. Like, he taught me everything. And you talk about someone being a jack of all trades.
Mm-hmm.
People still have no idea how integral Jeremy Borash was and is to wrestling that
Is
you're watching right now. And I hope people do. They should do a documentary on him, honestly, because he was so influential. Then Mike Weber, after the Ring Girl stuff, we then did a storyline. Then John, Sanjay and Jay left,
mm-hmm.
and then I went back to Ring Girl. Then Mike Weber let me be a host, and it was like I was so lucky to have. And again, there were ebbs and flows, and you kind of get a little disappointed here and there. But I just kind of kept going, how else can I contribute? I'll do the production assistant. I'll be an interviewer. I'll be, house show ring announcer. What do you need me to do? Because I'm not a wrestler. I'm not physically in there, but I just wanted to be around it for as long as I could and still do. And it's as simple as that.
Yeah, the go-getter attitude is so important, and you see
Yeah.
so often a lot of people, a lot of talent are just fantastic at one thing, like in the ring, or fantastic
Right.
promo, but they don't make the phone calls. They're not. You need. one thing they don't teach you, and you got to learn, it's a business of advocates. It's who knows you and who's going to say they know you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love that, because what a great mentor to have first out the gate, David, but like then to also be told, like, I know this isn't like, because we're young, right? And we go, well, wait, I thought I'd be I'd be managing the champ in the first year. You know, it takes a while for us to understand that we don't know anything yet.
Yeah. And that's why, like you said earlier, you have to know all the different aspects of it. And that's why when I meet people I've done a few seminars, not that I'm teaching, but I'll come in, like I was helping Robbie E with one time, and he had me interview the wrestlers. And I feel uncomfortable in a lot of ways to be like, I'm not going to comment on your wrestling, but if they're talking about a promo or like you're asking about, having a good attitude, that kind of stuff I can speak on, because it really does matter how you treat people. Because like you said, someone's going to advocate for you or not. Like, David Sahadi saw that I was a nice girl and that I wanted to be there. Jeremy Borash saw that I was like the first one there, last to leave. And Mike Weber, same thing. I mean, Eric Bischoff's one of the people that I always credit with being so lovely. He was there for like 3 months, and he was like, Val, he kept seeing me change outfits, and he was like, are you in a different outfit? I just saw you an hour ago. I'm like, yeah. And he goes, either we pay you too much or you just take this so seriously and you're having so much fun. He goes, you're amazing, because I wanted to say that I see how hard you work. I tell this on every interview because it meant so much to me to be pulled aside, because not to, again, name names, but I was there for a long time and I don't need that kind of praise, but to have it after all those years. And I was like, he just got here and he's already seeing like me running back and forth, my little briefcase and my scripts, and he sees me like running like with chicken with my head cut off and being there early and leaving late. And it just meant a lot to me that Eric Bischoff, who I freaking, worshipped, I was like, wow, that was really cool for him to notice that. And I feel like I've told him that in the last several years, because it meant so much to me. And again, do you need the praise? No, you shouldn't have to have it. But when you get it, it's like, wow, I feel so seen. Thank you. I worked my butt off,
Yeah, because a lot of times, and with the being a commentator, interviewer, assistant, backstage, and whatever, getting in where you fit in, there's a, you feel some. I felt sometimes, I don't want to say, but there's like the mentality of it's you don't deserve a lot of credit maybe sometimes, but I really think there's a beauty to it and a real art to it, because the big gripe, I'm sure you've always heard, of course, is like, don't try to get yourself over. But the art is getting yourself over by getting others over. Right? And that's where the brilliance of it is. If you can figure that out in the way you talk about someone, in the way you interview them.
Very, very true. But there's also something to be said for that, if I may, and just talking about, you'll understand this because of how well you're dressed and how professional you speak. What I get annoyed by too is like, really grinds my gears, is like, because I love to dress up. That's why I said you might understand this. Definitely will understand this, because I love to like dress like a star and wear the big hair and the sunglasses, and I dress really ridiculously crazy posh in the airport. Because I love it. Because who am I doing it for? Me, not for men, not for, because I love it. It makes me happy. Listen, you have to get up for a flight at 5 a.m. You got to do something to entertain your damn self. You know what I'm saying? But like when you dress like really loudly and extra, and you carry yourself very like star-like, it can very easily be misconstrued as you have an ego, where actually you check your ego at the door. I'm actually a very low maintenance person. I actually take really, not that this matters, but like I get ready really quickly. If you need me, they ask me to do something, I'm like, oh, I wasn't in hair and makeup yet. I don't care. I'll do it. It's fine. Am I gonna be on camera? Do you need it? I got it. Cool. Like, just, you got to check your ego at the door. It doesn't mean you have to not present yourself like a star and to think like a star and to know your worth. But it doesn't mean that, people should, paint this picture of you being so high maintenance when you're actually just trying to respect the business and dress well. And you know what I mean? I hate when that's sort of a misconstruent. Yeah.
Did just piggybacking off of that, that notion, did you ever experience anyone, and no names or anything, but any situations where it's like you said, trying to be a star, but they felt like you're trying to pull focus?
No one was mentioning.
Right.
I will say, my brother-in-law was in a very famous rock band, and he said one time to me, he goes, you know what? The bigger the star, the nicer they are. And I would say that's the most true statement I've ever heard, because when I was, like I said, isn't that so powerful?
Yeah.
Because when you're doing, okay, for example, I'm thinking back, we call it Weber World. Mike Weber would have me do these interviews, and I got to do like international markets. I got to say like lines in French and German. I had so much fun with it.
So cool.
Thank you, Mike Weber. And Love him. So I had so much fun back there in my little set, and I had like, the camera person, and I got to know the crew, and it was so much fun, and we had a little repertoire, whatever, rapport, excuse me. And when I needed people to do interviews, I would have to go to get an RVD, and they don't, the wrestlers don't a lot of times like to be chased for, oh God, what do you need from me, Val? Oh, here comes Val. What does she need? Funny, right? Because RVD, Hulk Hogan, Eric Bischoff, they would be, what do you need today, Val? You got anything for me? Totally
Mhm.
ready to help, right? And then again, no names, but the ones who were like, new to the company or trying to be seen or weren't doing that well or had like bad attitudes were like, oh God, I have to be on camera. And I was like, well, yeah, they asked me to, isn't that funny when that happens? It's never the ones who are famous because they have a great reputation. They have that go-getter attitude, as you so poignantly said. The bigger the star, the nicer they are. That is true in every aspect, in Comic Cons, with actors, everything. It's always the ones from like some bit part that are like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
late and I don't want to be here and blah. And I'm like, you're an
Yep.
actor. Can you act like you're having a good time? But like, then you meet like Andy Serkis and Ray Fiennes, and they're like, hi, what would you like to talk about today? And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
Crazy.
How cool is that?
I
They,
know.
because they know, because I kind of feel like they know, you know what I
Nothing
mean?
to prove. Nothing to prove,
Nothing to
right?
prove. Um, I encountered this a lot, and I, in my time in the industry, with getting along with almost everyone
Yeah.
there's there's always a few, but did you feel in addition to having a winning personality, because we almost weren't a threat, we didn't occupy the same airspace.
Yeah.
Were you privy to a lot of things you may not have been otherwise?
Yes. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
I always said, like, especially like with the girls' locker room, like we didn't have too much drama in like a TNA locker room, but like because that's what's so interesting, right? Not only do you get to be privy, like I'm sitting there with like, invisible popcorn, like, oh crap, hilarious. But because you're not a threat and you're not like trying to, as they say, take someone's spot, people are a lot nicer to you in that way. And then you're like a fly on the wall. But the best
Mhm.
part about it to me, and again, not naming names, give me a few more Pinot Grigio's, no, I'm kidding. But not naming names, but like what's the best part is you get to see how people really are and how they really treat other people.
Yeah.
Like, there were so many, and I'll use the girls just because I was in there physically in their locker room. Um, most girls were so, giving, and then they had like these model girls that would come into TNA to do these jobs. Like they would hire them to, come down the ramp and with Ric Flair, and they were models. And I'm also like, by the way, I'm from Orlando, and I've modeled with half these girls, so immediately. But even if I didn't know them, I'd be like, hey, I was like the welcome wagon. I'm like, hey,
Yeah.
this is the makeup room, and where are you from? And yay, and is everyone being nice to you? I hope so. If not, come tell me. I'm just not to be a snitch, but like,
Right.
I wanted them to be like, cool. Guys. I remember that happened with the two lovely Australian guys, Mikey Nichols and Shane. I want to say Haste.
Gut tail. I know who you're talking about. I do.
Yeah. Like when they first
Yeah.
came out, it was like, is everyone being nice? Like, okay, this is where catering is, And I remember
Because you
being
want
like,
them to have a good experience, right?
of course, but especially like not especially with girls, but the guys, I'm kind of like, I can tell there's going to be like maybe some reticence from the guys, like, oh, who's this new, that's like eye
Mhm.
roll, please. What are we doing in 2025? But or whatever year it was. But the girls, especially, not only because I'm a girl's girl through and through, but also because I'm from Orlando, I know half these girls. But even if I didn't, I take it very seriously when there's sort of girl on girl crime, right? So there were
Mhm.
certain people that would like see these girls in like the makeup room or these new models coming in, and they would be, and these are girls that are wrestlers. So that these girls are not wrestlers, they're models. But the wrestlers would get mad, and I'm like, she's literally here from a modeling agency, walking someone down the ramp or being in a segment, and you're gonna treat her badly? Like, no, 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 not today. We're not gonna be doing that. And I
Yeah.
say that now, I really couldn't speak up as much as I wanted to, but I felt like, again, not being a threat, I got to see how, and I remember exactly who treated these girls well and who did not. And I've run into some of these girls in the day, like back in the day, I've run into them now, and I'm kind of like, I remember. I remember. I remember you being
Mhm.
very difficult. Hope you've
Yeah.
grown up a little bit. Hopefully you have.
You have such a great outlook and
Oh,
giving
thanks.
people enough grace to
I
make
try,
mistakes. But yeah,
but I'll
that's
never
it.
forget.
You never forget, right? Right. Hope you've changed, because it's like going out with a girl on the first date. I always learn. See how she treats the waiter.
Oh my
See
God.
how she treats
That's
the
one of the biggest
waiter.
things with my husband, the way he treated like hey, how's your night going? And
Yep.
waiters stuff. I was like, that was one of the,
Strangers.
like, the seal the deal. I was like, this guy is a good dude. It matters. For those going on first dates, as you just said, like that is such a red flag, or hopefully a green flag, that when they're treating people that
Mhm.
are you know, because that's the worst when they're not, right? Like, I can't deal with that. That is so, people that do this, I'm like, I literally, I've cut
Oof.
promos on cruise ships, on airports. Like, here's what we're not going to do. We're not going to do that. We're going to treat them with respect, or you can leave, or we're going to have an
Yeah.
issue.
Everybody should have to either work retail or service at some point in their life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I have, but even if I haven't, doesn't matter. Like, you're a human
Right.
being. Here's the deal too. It's so much easier to be nice. It takes so less effort to be nice than it does to be difficult.
Mm-hmm. Amen, sister. Amen.
Right? Cheers to that.
You had, I'm trying to think of where to approach your TNA experience, but you were such an integral part of TNA. You were sewn into the fabric in a lot of ways.
Oh, thanks. It's a long time.
It was a long time, really. Like you grew. I think one of the reasons you've been such a staying force in the industry, and a reason the fan base has such a connection and feels so plugged into you. They've grown up with you. They've watched you grow up.
You know what's so cute? I didn't even think about this until you just said it. It's like we've grown up together, which is really cute. And I never thought I want to cry. I never thought about it until now, because I always say that I grew up in the business, but I really grew up in TNA. I mean, 18 to 27 years old, those are very formidable years. But if you think about it, if people were watching around the same age as I was, and now we're about the same age, and a lot of the fans are, we really did grow up together. And I think here's the deal, right? Like, if you looked at my TV time and screen time compared to other people in TNA, it doesn't come close, but I was still there and at the live shows and doing things behind the scenes and all that stuff that I feel like that's what's really given me the credence and the respect level to come back, for example, to come back to America and do WrestleCon and to do all these things. And I've always been very active on social media because I really enjoy it. But yeah, what's funny is, like, I'm not a wrestler. I never held a championship belt. I've never, never been to WWE. I've done some extra work there and it was fabulous, but I've never, had a WWE run per se. But I think just, like I said, maybe it's the age thing that we all kind of grew up together and we all kind of have a nice respect. Cause like I met a guy, and there's so many different eras, I will say, about my being in the business, which is fun to think about. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I had like the SoCal industry era. I did like PWG for a long time, and then I had my like Florida Indies era that I did TNA, and now I'm doing UK kind of progress and different things. But like a guy came up to me at WrestleCon in Vegas, and I love going to the West Coast because people will come up and go, "Yeah, I remember PWG," and he was talking about the Jewish Community Center and these hilarious shows and storylines, and I was like, I walked down memory lane with this guy for like a good 45 minutes, and that's what I mean though, is like he remembers being young at those shows, and I was probably even a bit younger at the shows too. It's crazy to think about.
It really is, and it's an important thing, because you had said, when you ask a lot of women that are in the industry, who are your influences, who'd you grow up watching, a lot of them will say Lita or Trish or Mickey, but you like the personalities, you like the devious, diabolique personality of a Stephanie McMahon, and also the beautiful girly girl of a Tori Wilson. So you never know who is looking at you and saying, "There it is. That's it. That's what I want. That's who I want."
That's for me. Yeah. And that's like the biggest compliment when anyone has ever said, like, somebody, it must have been like a year ago, they said something like, it was a few years ago. I believe it was Drilla Dan Maloney, who's another amazing UK and Japanese talent, from Birmingham, 0121. He said something to me. We were joking backstage, and he's like, "I always wanted to be on Spin Cycle," and I was like, "Stop it! Spin Cycle was the best." It was either him or someone else at the same show that said, "I love to be ring announced by you because I feel like I'm in TNA and I feel like I'm in like American wrestling." And I was like, "That's really cute and nice and sweet."
So cool.
Because I've heard people say that, like, not that I'm comparing myself to JR, for God's sakes, who I love, but somebody said to JR one time at a signing, I thought was the sweetest thing. They said, "You're the soundtrack to my wrestling, like my wrestling memories and the soundtrack to my life." But for someone to say that, like, when I announce them, they feel like they're in wrestling that they watched when they were younger, I'm like, that's really cool. That's really nice. Yeah.
There it is, right? Like, that's all the miles, the heartache, the headache sometimes, and
there's a lot of that.
There's a lot of that. You don't sell it one bit, but there's a lot of it.
A lot of fun, See, you don't hear me talk about the unglamorous side of things. I'm always like, fun. Yeah.
Right. And you, gosh, the eras you were involved in TNA, and TNA is such a interesting entity in and of itself in the wrestling business, and what it's meant not only to the industry and to the talent, but to the fans as well. Do you have an era or a time that you personally felt was the most exciting, or I don't want to say your favorite, but maybe I do want to say your favorite
Yeah, the
time
time that it
period
felt the
in
most
TNA?
exciting for sure. Like when you just said that, I started to think of one specific kind of era, and there were so many great ones. I mean, I did TNA, gosh, in 2001 or two, maybe 2003, I think, up in Nashville. So I got to see for like one show how that Nashville life was like. And to be
Yeah.
honest, like I'm so glad that this is, with all due respect, that was an amazing era too. But I got them when they were at Universal Studios and it was a lot more glittery and flashy. But then we're on Fox Sports Net. But then when we got the Spike TV deal, when Hogan and Bischoff were part of the company, and people always go, "Oh, they did this, they ruined it." I'm like, you don't know anything about either one of them. Especially I just sang Bischoff's praises as well. Hogan was always amazing to me politically. We don't get along now, but hey, other than that, he was always amazing to me, and I have so much respect for him in the business, and he's a really lovely guy. Like I said, we don't agree on political things. Other than that,
Yeah.
the Hogan and Bischoff era, I really think that the best time, the most exciting time for me, and again, I was there 9 years. It wasn't a short stint. That was the most exciting time because they were really putting us on the map with things. This is what WWE does too, if you'll notice. WWE, and at the time, what we were doing, what Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan were doing, was they're putting us on the map that didn't include wrestling. They were on ESPN talking about our show. It was becoming Impact, and it was really putting us in a more global view. And that felt very huge. The Spike TV deal, also, that kind of whole era was very huge. And it never really felt like an independent to me because, again, we were on a sound stage. It was a big deal. We had hair and makeup. It was a very, I was very lucky to be
Yeah.
around all of that. But it just felt very highbrow and like all eyes were on us at that point. And I don't think we ever got to a WWE level in to that extreme level, but we got to a place where we were definitely the second largest company, and we had such great minds behind us that were there to really help us and elevate us. And I really do thank Hogan and Bischoff for that, for sure. That's when the era, to me, that's the one that felt the most special and the most elevated, I'll say.
It's interesting because the fans are more than love that they have their opinions. They're absolutely entitled to them. They love this thing of ours, so they react and act passionately. But for people who say, "Hey, when the guy who is the only person in charge of a wrestling company to best the empire of WWE for over a year and a half, and the biggest, I don't know if he's the first, but tied for first, no doubt, draw in professional wrestling history, come into your company to outrun it, and that's a bad thing. You don't really get what this thing of ours is, right?
Right, and they weren't there. That's the thing. Like I just said, like even Bischoff, like I'm not just saying he was amazing because of the small thing he said to me. It's just that just showed me, like, it wasn't even about me really. It was just showing that, like, he was taking note of who was really there for the best reasons, who was really trying, and who was like had that fire about them. And I will sit to my own horn and say I did and do. But that was what I thought was so cool, was that, again, I mentioned Hogan earlier, like, "Hey Val, what do you need from me today?" And I'm like, "Well, you're Hulk Hogan, you can do whatever you want," or I don't know, like, holy man, and then there were guys that would come in, and I'm sure they saw that in them, that it was like a bother to do a promo with me, or a bother to be asked to do a meet and greet, or, "Oh, can you stay late?" "Oh no." Like, and where are these guys now? They're not in TNA, they're not in WWE, they're nowhere.
Yeah. And what a valuable resource you are for that. And because it's almost like they know everybody loves Val, and they can kind of send you into as a temperature check to see, what I'm saying?
You got to pass the Val test. No, I know what you mean. It never was a test, but like, it is funny to think about, because people were like,
It's revealing.
"What was so-and-so really like?" And I'm like, well, I can only go off of my own experiences, but like, you also get to know someone's reputation. And unfortunately, we said the bigger the star, the nicer they are. When people have a reputation for being difficult, not going to name names, everyone's watching. They know who people are that have difficult, reputations. Do you know why? Newsflash, because they're difficult. I mean, that's rocket science.
Yeah.
Don't be difficult, you know? Everyone goes through ebbs and flows, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, some people
Yeah.
are just difficult to work with and it's exhausting. And again,
Yeah.
this is wrestling. We're not curing cancer. We're doing our best to entertain people and have a fantasy world and escapism. But listen, you got to check your ego at the door, because what we're doing is a blip on the radar, and nothing in comparison to what people that are doing are saving lives and, you know, creating new scientific discoveries. And again, I'm not putting the wrestling business down at all. It's that you got to have perspective and you got to be grateful, you know? Like every plan I've ever taken since I was you know, a teenager to now at 39, you know, I'm going to the US soon. It's like I'm sitting there on the plane going, I'm still paid after 23, excuse me, 23 plus years in the business. I'm still paid to get flown to wrestling shows. And by the way, not even have to work at these anymore, not even have to work my ass off anymore, just to actually sign autographs sometimes. And I'm going to sit there and complain.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Right.
Who am I? You know?
Right. I want to talk to you real quick about your trip back over here.
Yeah.
Your portfolio, your resume is so diverse at this point.
Yeah.
What do you got on tap when you come back stateside?
Well, I'm still. It's perfect timing that I'm talking to you now, because I just booked some U.S. appearances. Which again, these are appearances. They're not even like me having to work too much. It's just actually doing like signings and things like that. Which again, I mean, I'm thrilled to be in any part of the business and host things. I host, if you're not familiar, I host Monopoly events, Comic Cons in the UK's and different ones. But here I do a lot of that. But in America, I still do a lot of wrestling bookings as well. And I will be at River City Comic Con. River City Wrestling Comic Con, and that is on June 7th and 8th in beautiful St. Augustine. I did it last year. It was so much fun. Of course, you can get on my socials. I promote everything to the hilt, because that's what you do. As we said, it's part of the biz, right? And I enjoy it. And then the following weekend, I'm actually doing with RDP Promotions, Richie DeGreg. He's so much fun. We're doing a virtual signing on Friday, June 13th, I believe. And then June 14th is an in-store signing with the Wrestling Universe, I believe. And that the info is obviously on RDP's site and my site. But yeah, June 13th, 14th in New York City. Love New York. Of course, I'm staying to shop because it would be rude
Yeah.
not to. And but yeah, June 7th and 8th, I'll be in St. Augustine. I got one more weekend in June that I might try to work for, but I have to remember that I'm home to relax and to actually see people and have fun. But you know, maybe it's the indie wrestling mentality. I'm like, all right, what bookings can I do? I got to get out there.
Got to get out
Rack
there,
up those
right?
miles.
The I also you talked about some of your great influences. There's a lot of like unspoken rules to being a host or a personality or MC, for lack of a better term.
Sure.
What, in your mind, what are some of the biggest infractions you see, and what is some advice you would give to the people, young people, whatever age, out there watching that say,
Yeah.
I think I want to get into this, but on those terms?
That's a great question. I'm trying to think what would encapsulate talking about like Comic Con hosting. I've hosted for darts over here. I've done like, you know, kind of a QVC style, like, you know, talk shows where you're selling
Yeah.
merchandise and memorabilia, and then wrestling, of course, included in all that. I would say the biggest thing that I hear about, which is funny because I do Comic Cons a lot, but when someone is not at a Comic Con that I'm at and they know that I've done it before, they'll go, "Oh, the host this year, I really missed you doing it," because they'll go, "The host this year made everything about themselves." And they talked, you know, 50%, you know, 70% of the time. And it's our, you know, it's our job to fill space, you know, dead air. I don't know about you, but it's like I
Dun,
talk
dun,
nonstop anyway,
dun.
but that's the worst, right? It's the worst feeling. It's like you're like pinning me down. I hate it. But that's not even what I mean. I mean like making it about you and like making the interview about like, oh, speaking of that, and then you tell your own personal experience. Not saying you can't tell any personal experiences, but you really have to be a good listener. You have to make sure that it's not about you, but still also connect with the audience. Like I try to actually sometimes before I do a Comic Con, for example, with wrestling, you can't always do that. I try to come out and talk to the people. Like if I had Ray Fiennes, for example, or someone that I'm totally marking out for, I have to remember that marking out is a wrestling term. I'm like, okay, fangirling, whatever. I go out in the crowd at the front row and I'm like, you guys, I'm freaking out.
Right.
They're like, me too. And I'm like, I know. And I'm like, but I've never interviewed this person before. And you guys you're there with me. Right. And like, I don't do it to like blow smoke. I'm doing it because I'm dead serious. And I'm like, I'm with you. I'm gonna fangirl just like
Yeah.
you. I just got chills thinking about it because I say before every panel, I go, okay, I'm gonna talk for a bit with this person, and I'm gonna fangirl, and then it's gonna be about you guys. We're gonna do the Q&A. We're gonna make it, you know, Monopoly events again. If you aren't in the UK, they're amazing. they always say we're by the fans for the fans, and it's not about what I'm saying. They want me to interview them, but then we go to the fans, we make it about them. So you have to remember that you're there as kind of an anchor and an intermediate person, a timekeeper perhaps, but and you can speak and have fun, but and you have to make the actor feel comfortable too, or the wrestler, whatever. But you have to not make it so much about you, and that's one thing that I find people doing wrong. As far as what's doing right, I mean, just being yourself. I still think the whole dressing like a star, dressing respectfully is important, but also like, and I say this with all passion, like social media is there for your taking, and to promote what you're doing and have active content, and to promote even just in terms of respecting the person and the event you're working for, to promote it and be involved is very, very important. And I don't know anybody in the business other than maybe, a Leonardo DiCaprio, who I love, that has any business, having no social media, or no, like, he still goes to press things, he still goes to Cannes and, different things. And you have to understand that side of the business is very, very important. It's almost in some ways more important than the job you actually do. And you have to be yourself, but also have a little bit of privacy, of course, with your personal life. That's everyone's choice. But, just to be active on social media and promote what you're doing, because no one's going to promote you like you can promote you.
Yeah.
And don't wait for promoters to do this. Don't wait for the person to go, oh yeah, can we get a picture of you? Take the picture yourself, post the interview yourself, do videos, talking to yourself. Just be out there and don't be shy and have fun with it. Promote yourself to the hilt, please.
Has there ever been a interview or what do they call it? Where a panel of sorts that made you nervous or did not go, just went terribly wrong?
Yes, and I'm glad that you asked, my friend, because again, I wouldn't name names, but like it's never anyone that's the bigger the star, the nicer they are. They know what they're doing. They there's not dead air. They're giving me back. I'll just name names and drop some names: Elijah Wood, Sean Astin, Andy Serkis, Ray Fiennes, Jason Isaacs, Gwendolyn Christie, Bella Ramsey. Just people that are just they're well versed in this. Susan Sarandon was incredibly charismatic, but it's the ones who. It's not even when somebody's a bit shy. Some actors are shy; they're more introverted, and that always kind of surprises me. But it's a thing; it can be a thing. But to me, I don't mind that. I can kind of get them out of their shell, or I can be respectful and maybe have the fans ask more questions because maybe they are. I can tell what they're enjoying more than maybe talking to me. But yeah, what I don't tolerate, and I have to of course still be polite, but what I can't stand is when someone acts like they're too big to be there and they're bothered by it. All right, so this company flew you in. You're getting lots of money, lots of money. Your job is to sit there and get compliments all day. And people want your picture and they want to tell you how great you are. And you're tired and you don't want fans to ask you questions. Do me a favor and get the hell out of here. I hate that.
Yeah, terrible.
It is the most unnerving, like it's the most ungracious, ungrateful thing. We were talking about having perspective, right? You got to sit there and go, gosh, am I lucky or what? Wow. And again, no offense, these are the kind of people that, and maybe it's worked for some people and they're major stars now, I don't know, but for most I feel like those are the ones that are probably not going to last in the business because they're going to get a reputation for being difficult, for being arrogant, for being ungracious with fans. As I said earlier, it costs nothing to be nice, and it's so much easier to be nice. So again, you're an actor. When you act like you're having a good time, do me a favor, let's get into character. Let's act like you're not a jerk. And it's, by the way, it's very rare, but it has happened. Yes.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, wrestlers aren't like that. I hate to say this, but like wrestlers mostly aren't like that because we're so used to like being like, we've watched Flair promos and we want to be like that. And then, but I will say a lot of athletes are like that too. They're very reserved. And it's like, I remember I asked one athlete and he goes, I think it was a UFC guy, God bless him. And I said, so, if the fans aren't familiar with their career, like, where did you start? Tell us, tell us something. And he goes, well, what do you want to know? And I was like, oh my God, anything. I don't know. Like, because he's not a wrestler, and wrestlers are trained to like interview, but like some athletes that are very serious athletes, like it's not in, and that's very foreign to me because I'm like, I'm like a Pomeranian. I'm like, hi, let's talk. But in the UK, that's very weird to most people here, but oh well.
What being so forward and openly,
I don't want to generalize. I always say this with moving countries, but like it is, and I'm talking to mostly American actors, I will say, but like just, I've noticed that about, there's a whole show called Ladies of London. It's like Real Housewives of London. It's coming back actually. And that was like half of the storyline was like all the women were watching like racing, like, horse racing. And they're like jumping up and down like, oh my God, hi. And they're bubbly. And the British women were kind of like, what are you doing? And I'm not saying that's rude. It's just not their way.
It's
So
just
I do
different.
often feel like I'm at an 11 and they're at like a 5.5, and I'm like, oh, I gotta like, all right, yeah. I
Pull it
struggle
back
with
a
that
little
here. I'm
bit.
just gonna be honest with you.
Yeah, that's hey, you're you, and it's done you really well.
I'm not gonna dial it down at this point, bro. I'm 39. You get what you
Yeah,
get.
we're in it. We're in the game now.
Yeah.
It's we're not turning back.
No.
The uh everybody gets their start differently. Everybody enters the fray in a different manner and way. This may be a broad paint stroke, but for anybody looking to get into the industry, whether it's hosting,
Yep.
whether it's wrestling, what advice would you give them?
Oh, it's such a cliche, but I would first of all say fake it till you make it. When I was making reels, I hadn't done that many events and things like that when I was younger, or modeling or whatever, I would do it myself. I would, I'd find monologues and find fake commercials on, Google, and I would, record voiceovers as if it, unless you're trying to prove that you really did do something. If they don't ask, they don't ask. They just want to see how you speak. I would record, fake commercials. I would do things for free all the time, and film myself, and always appear very busy, even if I wasn't. So that's one thing I will say that's very, very, some people would frown upon that. I don't, I think it's just you giving yourself more practice because you want to be more prepared when something really does come along. So just do your own thing, film yourself, watch yourself back, try not to be too critical, because that's very, it can be very sensitive to some people. You have to have a very critical eye, but not like no self-loathing, that's very important. Also, like we were saying earlier, doing your homework, watching those who came before you, studying women that you wanted to be like, or men that you want to be like, or anyone that you want to be like. And really doing your homework, having respect for those that came before you. I will say, to drop a name, Randy Orton once said he was taught to keep his mouth shut and his ears open. That's a big one, especially for someone who
Mhm.
talks as much as I do. But yeah, all those kind of stereotypical phrases are all very true. But also, take all the gigs you can, even if it's not paid when you're first starting out. Take all you can, and then film yourself, promote it like it's the Oscars. If you're asked to film a dog eating contest, whether it's paid or not, and you feel like that's going to help you grow as a host, go do it. Oscar Mayer is your freaking goal, and go have fun. Film yourself. Do social media for the event, even when you're not asked to. That's how I started doing Comic Cons here. I was signing as a guest, which is very lucky for me to be in wrestling. And I said, can I do some social media videos for you guys? And
Oh
thanks to
wow.
Showmasters, yeah. And then I said, I just started like filming my own thing. Then I got myself a mic. Then they gave me a mic flag. And I was like, then I became the official social media host and panel host because I was already doing it without being asked. Just like TNA, I wasn't asked to come there with tapes and resumes, but I wanted to be in the show. So I just made myself. There's a great word, ingratiate. If you ingratiate yourself, give it a goog, with the right people that you want to be around, you will. And again, if you're respectful and kind and patient, it'll happen for you. If you want it for the right reasons, it'll happen for you for sure. I guarantee it.
That is such great advice. That is such great
Hey,
advice. You kind of make your own breaks in a lot of
that's it.
ways, and
Don't wait.
don't wait. Nothing. Yeah, that
No.
nobody's sitting around waiting for you.
No, I went to one of my first progress shows, and there was a fabulous girl, and she was like, "Gosh, they wanted me to interview her for just a quick story. Sorry, I know we have to go, but
No, you're
a
fine. There's
quick
no
story." But
rush.
she was going to be like interviewed by me, and then I said, "Oh, we need you for an interview," and she was okay. So she patiently waited, and then they go, "Oh, we don't really need her to do an interview," and I was like, "Oh gosh," I just knew it was going to probably bother her because she was very happy to do it. And I said, I'm so sorry, they don't need the interview. And I said, can I give you, I didn't say advice. It's like, who am I to give advice? But I said, just so you know, I go, do yourself a favor. I go, you know what I would do? I said, I would go home and film myself like training. I would film a few promos. Do not wait for them to ask you to do anything.
Mhm.
Go film that promo. Go do it a few times. See if they want tweaks, don't be offended. Do it differently, or, try it a few times, try a few different takes, see how you like each one, see how they like each one. Film yourself, go into the show, do an arrival shot of yourself. You don't have to wait for any of these promoters to do it. That's what I love social media for, because
Yeah,
you're doing your own narrative, you're writing your own narrative and your own story. And listen, the promoter's not going to ask you to do an arrival shot and a promo, an interview, and post match interview. Do it yourself then.
do it
Do it.
yourself.
I dare you.
the
What's the worst that could happen? You have more social
right.
media content? Oh no.
Yeah,
Know what I'm
that's
saying?
it. That's it.
Yeah.
Girl, I feel you. I just in one last kind of parting question or inquiry. You're so positive, and
Thanks. I
you're
try.
you're you're such a just a beaming personality and aura about you that is it's magnetic. You fall in love with you literally.
Oh, thank you.
Takes just moments, and I don't mean that that's not showbiz BS, and it's the genuine article, and that's rare, and it's you know I feel fine saying that to you because I truly mean it. But
Thank you so much. That's an honor coming from you. Thank you. Same, likewise.
Thank you. But I know it's not always easy. It's not always, all the hits firing on all cylinders. What has been a overarching obstacle or adversity you found yourself facing, enduring, and ultimately, hopefully, overcoming?
Oh gosh, I mean, you know what? And it's still kind of a thing that strikes me down to this day. Unfortunately, is I was homeschooled when I was in, oh gosh, fourth grade onward, and I have Epstein-Barr and chronic fatigue as a kid. Which, listen, it's a very livable thing. It basically means my immune system is awful, and I get sick, and I get sick for longer, and I get sick a lot, lose my voice, and I still deal with that today. Like jet lag hits me worse. It's just one of those things that I get run down very quickly. That's been hard in the business with the travel and things like that.
Right.
But I will say, things happen for a reason, because I was talking to someone recently about being a homeschool kid, and with all due respect to people that homeschool, we did, my sisters and I, my two older sisters and I, were homeschooled because we physically had to be. My older sister was actually in a band around the whole NSYNC pop band kind of stuff, and she was on tour. She had to be tutored for that reason.
Wow.
Yeah, and then she had to be, but she was also out of school anyway. Just like we all three we got chronic fatigue at the same time. I was 5, my other sister was 7, and she was 10. So from those ages onward, we just struggled with getting to school, and we were sick all the time. And, her being in the music business, and my middle sister was in the music business, and, I got into the wrestling business. It's really been debilitating in some ways. It's gotten a bit better, but that's one thing that people don't usually know. That's kind of like, I'm just sick a lot. That's one of those things. I just kind of, I get, my husband will get a cold, and I'll have it for like, a week and a half. He'll have it for 2 days. It's just one of those things. That's kind of been a hindrance, but I mean, I'm very lucky. But back to the homeschool thing, the reason I see this as a blessing in a weird way, it's a lot of homeschool kids are quite sheltered, and that's why they have to be homeschooled. They think, it's a religious choice, which is their choice and all that. But I wasn't homeschooled for that reason. I was homeschooled because I had to be, because of my health. But literally, I was, I went to church, and I did, things with other kids, but I was very much, I grew up around entertainment, and I grew up kind of very fast in a good way, like not in like a weird way, but like I was raised around adults. I was treated more like an adult, and I was kind of a lot more mature than my friends were, because I was doing school kind of on our own terms. It wasn't like go to school for this many hours. So I think in that way that really helped me. I had this conversation with Ken Anderson one time about homeschool, and he goes, I think that's why, because I told him how much I love to learn. I was like, I love paleontology, and I love, the British monarchy, and Egyptology, and all these different things. And he goes, I think that's why, he was talking about homeschooling, because I think that's why you're like that, because you were learning because you liked it, not because you had to. And maybe that's why being in the business kind of was so, I wanted to soak it up and be around it and learn about it, because it wasn't the draining, no offense to the school system, but I think that really helped me. And if it wasn't for those health reasons, I would have never gotten to be treated like an adult and be around rock stars and wrestlers and all this cool stuff, So again, perspective is amazing, and it's very important to have. And it really makes you grateful to look back and think that way, and to think in a positive way.
I really thank you for sharing that, because I think there's a lot of reluctance when people have something that just it impacts their lives more than anybody could imagine, but it's because it's either not well known, or it has maybe like a name that is like, wait a minute, what? Right? Like they feel sometimes strange, or feel a stigma or a reluctance to share it. But if you
how does it come up?
Right. That means somebody else is going through it and looking for a way to deal with it.
Exactly. It's still a thing. I mean, by the way, I think I misspoke. It was actually mono that we had when we were younger that went into Epstein-Barr. People don't talk about it. They really don't. And it's one of those things, my mom, God bless her, was always fighting with the schools. Like, no, I swear they're sick. Here's the temperature. Here's the note from the doctor. Like, they have strep throat. Now they have this. They have, all these things that killed people back in the day. And we were just, and we'd all catch it from each other. We're just always sick. And it was just a thing that really thwarted our school, trajectory. But again, aren't we glad it did? Because we've all been in really cool entertainment situations, and perhaps that's sort of the price you pay. And again, it's nothing compared to what other people deal with, but it was, it was a bit of a struggle,
Yeah, and you've said it a few times. It's like, well, who am I to give advice? Well, I'll tell you who you are. You've been in the business for 20 plus years. You're somebody who and have been successful. Of course, you can give advice. You are somebody who's lived it and done it. And you say, well, I haven't been through. Other people have been through worse. Yeah, but that doesn't invalidate what you've been through. And
oh my gosh, you make me cry. That's so sweet. Thank you. I just never want to be braggadocious, and be like, oh, well, I've been in the business forever. I don't want to be that person,
Well, it's. I think it's important to recognize that, like, because there's somebody out there going through that, and you are somebody who's hasn't, it affected you, and you found a way to adapt. You found a way to roll with the punches, and that's the measure. That's the how you can endure and exist around, because everybody's got their thing, everybody's got their ish.
Of course.
How do you, suit up and armor up and not let it stop you from getting what and where you want to be and go? So
yeah, that's so well said. What a host, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for that. That's so nice. Thank you. I appreciate it. My gosh, that's so sweet. Yeah. Thank you.
Valerie, I just want to recap the dates. We're going to throw them up for when you're over here one more time. Give those to me again.
We have June 7th and 8th in St. Augustine, Florida for River City Wrestling Con. Then I'll be in the Big Apple, NYC. It is a virtual signing. We're going to be on Facebook and whatnot with RDP Promotions, Richie DeGreg. I'm going to post about it, of course. That's a virtual signing. You don't have to actually physically be there. Then the next day, that's June 13th. Then June 14th, I will be in, I believe it's called Whitestone, New York. I think it's by Queens. It is also through RDP Promotions. That is an actual in-person signing, so I hope to see you guys there. Listen, any excuse for me to come to America, and especially Orlando. I know I'm SoCal Val, but I've lived in SoCal for only a few years. Orlando's been my home for the most of my life. To come home and then to come to New York City, one of my favorites ever, I'm just so grateful. See, that's the perspective, Very lucky.
There it is. Leave some room in the suitcase, because you got to go shopping, especially in New York, right?
Oh, yeah. I actually said to Tony, I'm going there for an extra day or two to shop, so... And they make the best martinis in I know exactly where the best martini is in New York City. I'll let you guys know.
Okay, great. Cool deal.
I'll let you know in the comments.
Hey, I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Valerie, you really, even if you weren't in there having 8-minute matches, and like, let's not talk about what you didn't do. Let's talk about all the things you did. And it's you've had an amazing storied career, and you are still at it, and your career can be a blueprint on what it is to not be necessarily a physical participant in the industry, but to become an integral part in front of the camera, behind the camera, and then beyond the industry. You could write a book on it, and so much of it has to do with talent and showing up and being there and being ready, but also you have one of the best attitudes and
thank
presence.
You so much. Well, I want to wish you continued success. This is an amazing podcast. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm so proud of you. Honestly, it's just such a great interview. You've asked so many questions that have never been asked before, so it was really, really, really enjoyable for me. So thank you, Dom.
Thanks, Valerie. This has been LiMPiN AiNT, SoCal Val, the one and the only. Don't forget to catch her when she comes stateside. We're going to throw up those dates. My name is Timmy Baltimore. We'll see you here next time on the program.
So there were certain people that would like see these girls in like the makeup room or these new models coming in, and they would be, and these are girls that are wrestlers. So that these girls are not wrestlers, they're models. But the wrestlers would get mad, and I'm like, she's literally here from a modeling agency, walking someone down the ramp or being in a segment, and you're gonna treat her badly? Like, no, not today. We're not gonna be doing that. And I say that now, I really couldn't speak up as much as I wanted to, but I felt like, again, not being a threat, I got to see how, and I remember exactly who treated these girls well and who did not. And I've run into some of these girls in the day, like back in the day. I've run into them now, and I'm kind of like, I remember. I remember you being
Mhm.
very difficult. Hope
Yeah.
you've grown up a little bit. Hopefully you have.